You're listening to Breaking New Ground. In this podcast, we provide thought-provoking conversations for those looking to begin or advance their entrepreneurial real estate goals.
Together, we'll venture into the world of commercial real estate with entrepreneurs who challenge the status quo, building innovative paths with bold approaches.
We're your hosts. I'm John Pugh, a real estate developer and investor.
And I'm Rachel Walters, a real estate marketing expert. Throughout our episodes, we'll bring in real estate trailblazers, creating a space for inspiring conversations surrounding commercial real estate.
Pugh Management is proud to sponsor the podcast Breaking New Ground. Pugh Management is a premier developer for mixed-use, multifamily, and industrial properties. We love to develop places to live, work, and play. Pugh Management partners with family offices and institutional investors on projects in New England and Central Florida. Check us out online at pughmgmt.com.
Welcome to Breaking New Ground. Today we are speaking with Jason Adams, a data-driven real estate developer and entrepreneur. Jason began his entrepreneurial journey straight out of college. He has worked across asset types including single-family home building, multifamily, car washes, and self-storage. Welcome to the pod, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jason.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you here. Yeah, absolutely. So we're just going to kind of dive right into things. I think we're going to really, kind of explore your journey and learn more about your business, what you're excited about, and wanted to start off with the most important question of the day. What are you most excited about right now in terms of opportunities and what you're seeing in the market?
Yeah, well, it's funny. One thing about business and life, everyone wants to be successful when the market's hot. And then when the market's not, everyone thinks it's bad times. So it's tough out there right now. It's challenging. But what I'm excited about is there are some supply constraints that are building with these capital challenges. So I know, John, you have an athletic background. Mine maybe not so accomplished, but athletes learn that you got to put in the work in the off season to have the fruits when the game time's coming. So we see the economy rebounding in late 25 and 26, and now is go time. And we're excited that there's some cynicism and skepticism because I think when our projects come opening in the next couple of years, we're going to be ready to go when others are just getting started.
Fantastic. That's a great point. Yeah, I think your point about the capital markets and those constraints is extremely important because those that can execute now are really only going to benefit. So I think there's a lot of good things to be said for that. In terms of those types of projects, so what type of projects are you specifically kind of interested right now? What are you kind of initiating? What are you looking at?
Yeah, we have some ground up self-storage sites that we're working on. We have 4 actually that are 3 are permit ready, 1 soon to be, that will be breaking ground next year. And we are doing our first value add for a small bay light industrial. We haven't done anything like that, but it's kind of like a bigger form of storage or a kind of a multifamily of industrial. And that's an exciting project for us.
I know you're on the West Coast. Can you share what geographies you're looking at in terms of asset classes? And it can be broad. You don't have to give us, but it's, as much as you want to share for our audience.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I live and work in Oregon. We have done projects out of state, but right now we're focused in Oregon itself. And Oregon has some of the strictest land use laws in the country in terms of zoning regulations. It's really hard to get those changed. And the urban growth boundaries, we've got walls or lines around our city that you can't get beyond. So what it tends to do is it makes the process longer and slower and create, this supply constraint. But also our housing units are particularly small because of this too. We're getting more apartments, less garages. So we like the storage space in Oregon right now. And it's, it's familiar and it's close to home. So we're doing it.
So are most of these new projects, are they mostly kind of in the suburbs, right around the kind of inner ring of the city? Which specific city in particular or multiple cities?
Yeah, multiple cities. So for those of you who aren't too familiar with Oregon, we have the Cascade Mountains that divide the state east and west. A lot of the moisture stays on the west side of the state, and you have Portland, Salem, Eugene, very wet, call it the valley. East side is more of what we call a high desert. It's actually pretty dry, and we live just on the east side of the Cascade Mountains. So in Bend, Oregon is where we're at. We have a couple of projects. We're a classic Zoom town right now. We have people moving here from Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, oftentimes, bringing their families, but keeping their jobs. And we have a fair amount of commuting work. But classically, Central Oregon has been a retirement community. But we do have projects over in the Eugene, Springfield area and Corvallis, our two largest universities. And that section of the I-5 corridor is growing. I think as people move out to California, I-5 is a natural place to travel, or the people experience getting up there. It's easy to move, and I-5 connects California and Washington.
I think I was kind of curious about is, are you mostly building are these self-storage facilities just on the edge of town, like many traditional self-storage, or are they more urban or a little further out? Kind of what's the strategy with that?
We have a little of each. We have two that are more more rural, edge of town, single level, exterior access, more the classic self-storage. But we have our two most recent are more urban. They're multi-story. So one is 3-story, one is 4-story. And in the kind of urban environment, you almost got to go vertical with land costs here.
Sure.
In these markets.
And the rents are obviously strong enough to be able to drive that, because obviously you're doing them. So is that,
yes.
I mean, just out of curiosity, like what's the difference in rents from those two different types of locations? Are they double, or are they 50% higher? Or?
I'd say,
because the cost has to be, the only reason I'm asking is the cost has to be significantly higher, right? We're doing multi-story.
Yeah, it varies a lot. I mean, it varies from town to town, and it varies from kind of in a town. But I'd say if I had to generalize and say edge of town, drive up versus urban, kind of the climate controlled indoor, probably 30 to 50% more. But some of that has to do with the size of the units. So you can get away with smaller units in the urban environment. You tend to have smaller users, more that single person college student.
I see.
And so that per square foot goes up quite a bit. I mean, we can have, 5x5 go for, $350 a square foot, but a 10x20 is going for, $1 a square foot. So it can be quite a range just based on the size of the unit.
Got it. Interesting. So when you and I connected, you were kind of enlightening me, sharing some different things that I found really interesting. You talked a bit about the automation that you were using. I'd love to hear, share that a little bit more with the audience, kind of learn a little bit more where you are using it strategically, where you think might be other opportunities to use it in the future. It'd be great to kind of hear kind of how you do that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know most people really pride themselves on their spreadsheet performas, most of them in Excel, and they've had them for a while. I think the unfortunate thing about most Excel spreadsheets is they've got a lot of manual formulas, so there's a manual effort to use, and people tend to be very protective about them. Oftentimes there's one person who's like in charge, and they don't want others to break it. Yeah. So all the data's got to go through a single person, and then you got to pick and choose variables that you're looking at. And so with Excel, it's not a database truly. You're actually you're combining a form, a database, and a visual like reporting tool. And so people will have some strategy to make multiple tabs. Oftentimes they'll just copy a tab and they'll say, here's this one. And when you're like buying a property, you'll be like, here's my 3 different purchase prices, but I've fixed in my rents and my costs. And then you buy it, and then you kind of maybe delete a couple tabs, and then you kind of go, well, I'm looking at my high, medium, low for job costs. And then I introduced my high, medium, low for rents. Yeah. And I introduced my high, medium, low for schedules. Well, I say, how many tabs is that? 3 times 3 times 3 is 27 tabs. Most people stop at some point and go, I'll do most at 8 or 10 tabs. Well, I look at that as a process constraint. You're actually limiting the input and also limiting the number of people who can use it. So that is kind of the world that I've felt, and I wanted to get beyond. And then in truth of it, there are lots of variables to these projects, and
absolutely,
we tend to simplify them, particularly if you get into partnerships. So you've got your you got your debt options, debt 1, debt 2, you're going to refinance. Then you've got your partnership, like, do I have pref equity? Do I have LPs? And I have a GP, co-GP. So I've looked at this, taken a step back and said, whoa, this is a bunch of variables, what I think might be best called a multivariable analysis. Why not have a database? So we've built a very simple set of forms where allows users to enter like a high, medium, and low, or however many they want to at the different points. And then we can actually have multiple people working on this analysis. So it's not just the controller or the CFO. You actually can have we have a director of development who's doing job costs, and we have an operations person who's interacting with our third-party managers, and we have our finance guy who's working with debt. And I tend to sit in there and monkey with everything. But you kind of want to gather the data easily and not constrain that. And then what we build is called scenarios. So anybody can come in. I think at this point we have like 13 different variables. They can just go through the list and pick these variables and say, here's a scenario. And, for a certain point of view or a certain group. And then at that point, all the calculations are automated. So we'd like to think about, there's a process. I think of real estate almost like a translator, like foreign languages, like talking to a general contractor versus a banker versus an equity partner.
Very well put.
Versus a third-party manager. It's like speaking French, German, Chinese, and Japanese.
Yeah.
And part of the battle is just translating this. Like my investor wants IRR, and my GC wants a % markup, and my banker wants a debt service coverage ratio. And so when you can automate that, you can just spit it out in their point of view. And so oftentimes we're looking at projects, and we're going to go pick these scenarios, and we're looking at how will the investor look like this or think of this before we talk to them? How will the banker think of this before we talk to them?
Yep.
And so ideally when we present stuff to these parties, it's been well vetted, and it's easier for them to understand, more likely for them to say yes, or we can say no quicker too. Like, that's not going to work for our partners or our banker. No, we're passing.
So I think I'm going to guess, but I think most developers, I'm certainly fall into this particular category. Most developers come from a pure, I learned development. This is the way you do it. These are the spreadsheets that you use, the formulas, etc. I'm going to speculate here, and I'm curious what your opinion is. But because you have such a varied background, having your home building business, etc., that you've kind of looked at things from a lot of different angles, and you think of it as a business as opposed to a real estate development project. That maybe has led you to come to doing things this way. Is that a good kind of read on the situation?
Absolutely. I think I see myself as a service business, a digital service business.
Interesting.
There is a hard asset out there called real estate. I don't charge for my time, so I'm not a consultant, but I'm actually taking a big thing like a $20 million project, and I'm piecing it down into smaller parts. So it's not different than, like stockbrokers, financial advisors, different sorts of retailers where they're taking this whole and breaking it down. And so it's a service.
Yep.
And like I said, it's a translation service. It's a people business in my mind, although there's plenty of, sticks and stones out there.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I'm curious, kind of how do you mentioned kind of communicating with the various parties. Is there a big part of that or a big piece of that also communicating with investors? Because I feel like that can be a time-consuming thing for developers. I know from experience. Is that something you also have automated or have put some processes around to help you kind of streamline things?
Yeah. So I do like to highlight the norm as I understand it and how we do it so you can kind of see the difference.
Sure. Yeah.
So like if you think of a pitch deck, most people will take a snapshot of a financial model and they'll put it into a PDF with a bunch of pictures and send it around.
Yep.
The truth be told, that financial model is being tweaked and adjusted a lot usually as people are exploring these things. And it's this balancing act of like, I can't have everything solved before I talk to my investors because what my investors thinks plays back into the picture here. So it becomes this loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So usually the static PDF that tends to become old, and then people get nervous to make a new one because then there's now two versions. And what if Joe sees or his brother sees or buddy sees the wrong one? Which one am I looking at? Yeah. So that's one way to think about it. But then after they've made the investment, there's the how do you keep them updated? And that is oftentimes done through, once again, PDFs. If you're on top of it, maybe you do a quarterly update, or your software prints out something, You ultimately get your K1s, you get your news conferences. So one of our goals is to think of data as live, as a living, breathing thing that's to some extent always changing. Now, most people don't want to see it all the time, but it's nice to know that when looked at, we're all looking at the same thing.
Sure.
So from the live, so we have something we call a live pitch deck we're rolling out where we can update it, and it's a link on our website basically. So we can update this without going through our marketing channel and kind of make adjustments and then tell people to check back in. And then on the flip side, after investments are made, we're looking at things like fill-up rates, cash flow, whatever, KPIs we want to on like on my dashboard. And then we will provide access to our investors so they can follow it too. So
that's awesome.
The
really
goal
cool.
the goal is not that they care all the time. We typically find out investors care a lot at the beginning, not so much at the end. But I think when it comes to bringing people together, the toughest thing is keeping them on the same page.
Yep.
People do focus on winning, and winning is important, but losing is honestly a part of life. And keeping people on page when you're losing, just like you're winning, helps so much. So people's expectations and reality, you don't get these slapping moments.
Yeah. Not even a digital aspect, but just in a transparency trust. I mean, there's so many times where I've, shared data and people want it and then they don't really, ask for it or go and log in. But if I can imagine if I was an investor in yours and you're giving me this access, currently, I would just feel like, wow, this is a really transparent relationship. And it would seem like even it would just build trust, even if the person doesn't log in, just the fact that you're sharing this in such a easy, quick way.
That's great. Yeah.
And I think that the last thing we all need to focus on here as businesses and developers in 2024 is that the phone is where things happen, the mobile device. And if your data can't be easily seen from a phone, you're getting left behind. And so I think having that, being able to format. And some of it's marketing, honestly.
Oh yeah.
I think that our investors, my goal is my investor can be on the golf course and open up his phone and be like, hey, look at how my investment's doing. Look at it's going up.
Sure.
And the other golfers go, ooh, I've never seen that before. Who's that guy?
Well, it's an interesting point, and to what Rachel was saying as well. I think there's it also heads off so many questions, right? Like I can't, and I'm sure you've dealt with this, which is probably the reason you built the tool. I can tell you how many times I've gotten the same question from our investors about over and over and over again about the same exact issue. And it turns into 10 emails, and as opposed to, maybe having access to this is what's going on in the project. I mean, that would just solve so many of those questions.
Yeah. What if people are even on the wrong version or you saved it or they're an email behind? I mean, just get rid of all of that friction.
So I'm curious kind of in terms of your business then, Jason, most developers aren't doing this, right? So I think it's great that you're doing it. I think some might be saying to themselves, that sounds expensive to develop my own proprietary model. Is that something you just decide to invest a lot of money in and make it an important part of your business?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a 7 or 8 year journey for me, and it's not been cheap. I didn't sit down with a budget and said I can know the ROI. For me, it was like a quality of life. I want to know what's happening. So there's a point in my business where I had a storage unit, a car wash, multifamily, and I was building a few homes, and I had all these different things to go log in, and I would print stuff out and get highlighters, and I was like, oh my goodness, what's happening? I want this to be quick and easy. I wasn't at the time, but I was seeing ahead. I'm going to start a family. I'm going to have kids. I'm going to be involved in their lives. I don't want to be printing out stuff and doing highlighters and emails all the time. So
we have a term for it. Death by dashboard, logging into too many dashboards.
Yeah. So I think what's happened is as I've been happy, I can follow my projects and my business. I see it being attractive for others who struggle. And I have not done a lot of I've done a little bit of LP investing, just enough to experience people's pain and kind of go through it. Yeah. So I know that it's not the most pleasant experience for people. And a lot of it's just they want to know how's it going, but how's it going to turn out? Like Jason, what's this going to look like? Am I going to be okay?
Yeah.
What do you think? When am I going to get paid? And I want to just be able to have, here's your 4 charts, look at them anytime and certainly call me, but we're not going to start off with how are things are going. I'd love to start off the conversation with like, what should we do about this? And that's a really useful discussion with any investor to kind of happy to get your insights or thoughts.
Well, and I think your point about having some experience as an LP is really important too, because I've invested in some projects as an LP now, and I've been on the other end sending emails, but as a result of being an LP now for a few years, receiving the updates in the emails, you definitely start to see, because you also produce them, you start to see some of the either shortcomings of a particular model or whatever, and especially like, for example, I got one the other day, and it was probably 5 pages long. I don't want to read 5 pages about an investment. Like, I just want to know, is it going well? And what are the highlights, right? But it's just like, it feels like that process is definitely still very ripe to be disrupted. So are you going to try and market this as a product at some point, or are you just happy to use it internally?
Right now, just a plan to use it internally. Oh, I'll tell you something really, really exciting, super simple. Everybody can do this. We are starting to do more video messaging.
Mm-hmm. That's smart. Like Loom or something?
No, just like my iPhone. Like, rather than send a long text message, just grab it and say, hey, how's it going? Thinking about you. Here's what I want to tell you. Here you go. Call me anytime. It's so much more personal.
So simple.
Or that email, right? Like, rather than send someone this long email, one of the things we like to do is to do, it's like a screencast where you take your screen and you make a little video and you get your face in a corner.
Yeah.
So rather than sending them just a whatever, like, I'll show them and my face is there and I'm talking and they don't have to read. And I think the video communication, even recorded, beats the heck out of emails and text messages. We're getting good feedback so far.
That's a great point. Wow. It's funny. It's kind of obvious, but I never thought of it before. That's a great point.
Yeah. Like if I have a meeting with a new investor, I'd try to, like, in a day or two, send a little video. Hey, it was great to talk to you. So excited, and something about them. I'm so excited to hear about you and your wife and your retirement or your business sale. Let me know how we can, make your goals come true.
Nice. Very cool. So I guess, from zooming back out, I'm just I want to get back to your macro thesis. I'm curious about, you mentioned this a little bit at the beginning, but self-storage. Why is self-storage what you're focusing on today? Why is that the space that you really feel strongly about, that you're putting your betting on?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think there's a state level that I like. Like I was talking about the land use laws in Oregon, but I think on a macro level, we're expecting the economy to stay strong and inflation to be strong. And so with a lot of commercial leases, they are long-term, and people, gosh, it's just really tough to change a mindset that like inflation is going to be more than I expect. And so if you sign a 5 or 10 year lease and you don't benchmark to some appropriate inflation factor, you'll fall behind the pricing of the market. Sure. So one of the nice things about storage is it's largely month to month, and it's just the industry standard. It's the darndest thing. No one signs a 5-year storage lease or offers it. So it's easy to keep up with inflation in that sense. And also on the exit side, I'm definitely a build to fill to sell. The REITs are super active. The public markets are super active in the storage market. And so getting these Class A assets full and selling seems easier to me than selling a house. Like in our market right now, there was a $5 million storage facility that came on the market. It was kind of older. It wasn't even great rents. And there was 11 bidders in 1 week for this thing. Now, there's a house next door to me that's beautiful and, a fifth the price, and it's been on the market for 3 months. And it's just darndest thing that storage in our market, storage demand is stronger than housing or any asset I've seen. You can buy office, you can buy houses, you can buy multifamily, but go buy me a storage unit. I can't find one. So I like, when I get to that point, I like to think it's going to be an easy exit and not going to be a struggle.
So is a big part of your business model kind of a merchant build approach?
Yeah, I would say our goal is to, identify it, build it, fill it, and sell it in 3 to 5 years.
I thought this is where you were going to go earlier, and it's a little bit, different than data analysis, but are you using tech automation in your storage for operations?
Yeah. So we hire third-party managers to manage our facilities.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, the standard, so I was one of the first in our market to do like a kiosk type move in. Now it's just standard, or you could say the phone is a kiosk. So the standards now are, at least our standards are call centers, mobile move-ins, gate controllers, cameras. There's some people that are trying to get drones in there to like monitor things. We're not doing that. Some people are doing heat sensors in units to make sure people are living in there. We're not quite worried about that and doing that. There are some new innovations around the unit controllers that we're exploring that you can actually control the lock at each unit level. So that's, the basics of the technology. But other than that, it's, I think the industry has matured a lot since COVID. It's just kind of changed, all that we were doing it before COVID.
Just kind of following on that point, so in terms of your business model, are you actually the GC in addition to being the developer, or are you hiring third-party GC?
Yeah, we're hiring third-party GCs and third-party managers. I have, on my first 2 storage projects, I was the GC and the operator. And I think at some point, at least I know there's some different thoughts on this, but my thought is I'm ultimately going to be good at something, or want to be good at something. The better I'm good at something allows me to really differentiate. If I try to be a good operator, GC, and like developer fundraiser, it's just a lot. And maybe it's the time of life. I have a fourth grader and a second grader at home. I coach Little League and avidly involved in soccer and skiing. And so it's a bit of it's my time that I want to limit, but also I think as a professional, I want to get really good at this one thing. Yeah. And it's really tough to compete with like a Cube Smart or a Public Storage or Extra Space when it comes to management. And these GCs too, they're really good, but they don't do what they don't do. I do, and I like to do it. And so I like my lane.
Nice. That's great. I think that's a great endorsement for that approach. I think part of the reason I asked that question is there anything in your process, and maybe just more speak to the development side of things, in terms of hiring the GC, managing the general contractor during the process? Are there any software packages, anything that you use that you're particularly pretty kind of committed to?
Yeah, they do Procore. We just have a nice Microsoft a Business Central accounting system, and then our big packages are analytics, our Domo, and we think of estimating as the thing we're doing. We're really trying to pull in all these different pieces and kind of give this future look. So that's the big value we bring to the process. But yeah, once construction starts, we'll use our Procore and we'll interface with the third-party manager however they want to.
Did you say there's a specific estimating software that you use, or you create your own database or spreadsheets that kind of tracks whatever the pricing is?
We create our own database. Yeah, I think that's what we do. We are ultimately an estimating machine. We're an aggregator of estimates. We take then the contractor estimates, the third-party manager estimates, the bank estimates. We pull this in, and then we're spitting out, like I said, the interpretations of these, or the aggregation of these things.
And maybe for those that don't know self-storage development, what are the main kind of pieces of a construction package that are most important to kind of focus on in terms of the total cost of a project?
Well, I mean, since we're starting off with land, I always get focused on what it takes to get that land flat and the offsites for it. So we have a fair amount of incomplete roads and water utility systems and sidewalks and even rocks. And so getting that thing to a flat pad ready site is the first puzzle. And then we take the land cost plus that offsite cost, and we call it our lot cost, just a little minor tweak on the verbiage there, or the per square foot, as we compare sites, because the land price from one site to another doesn't really tell the full story as like the finished lot price. On a per square foot basis. So once we get that established, looking at various options, the vertical The biggest variance, as I said, the single level and the multi-story, but
is that concrete frame, the multi-story? Is it steel frame? How's that built?
We're doing steel framing, and a lot of this is some form of I think of it as a kit. So no one's really out cutting stuff so much. They're just assembling these things. And there's getting new processes out there for the multi-story to even improve that, making, and I'm not the expert there, but we have good steel suppliers and general contractors. I think if anything, we just try to continue to shorten the process or the time frame for building.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've looked at a self-storage project probably twice in my career, and we consider building one, but it's definitely a specialty I'm not familiar with. I love the product though. I think it's just a super interesting space.
Very interesting.
I guess let's talk about, I think we're on the realm of wrapping up. I'd love to just kind of get your thoughts on, where you see 2025. It sounded like you're pretty excited about things kind of picking up at the end of the year, next year. Is there anything kind of going into 25 that you're really focused on? It sounds like additional site selection in addition to some of the projects you already have going, or are you really focused on those existing projects and kind of getting them exactly where they need to be?
We have a really strong pipeline right now, so we're focused on the execution of them. I mean, we're always looking for things. We're looking at an adaptive reuse right now for a self-storage site in Eugene where it's a warehouse. We would kind of gut it out. But I think, I'll tell you something that I think is just, so a lot of topics that are one topic that's getting talked a lot about right now is AI, and I won't jump into that, but that is a big deal right now for any business operating. The other one, which is happening right now that people are not talking about, is access to international talent. And at the Reconvene conference, I sat next to a guy who's a self-storage operator. He's in Colorado. I think he's got like 10 or 12 sites, and 100% of his staff is in Latin America.
Is that Baird? I think his name
Baird.
is
Yes,
Baird.
yes,
Yeah, I met him as well. Interesting guy. Yeah.
And he's actually creating a service to help source his people. But what he says is these workers, their pay is 3 to 5 times their local pay, even though it's like a third of our pay. There's just a huge labor gap. Yeah. And I think we as Americans tend to think that people from Panama or Brazil are somehow like 100 years behind us in terms of quality of life or skill sets. But in truth, the reality is they're building stuff there. They're designing websites. They're managing accounting. There's huge industries down there. It's just the cost of living is different.
Absolutely.
And they can't afford to come here, and we go there. So labor, I think, is going to be a challenge for the next 6, 7, 8 years, because you got to have painters and electricians and framers. That's not going to change that. But all the digital services, and there's a lot, and I consider myself a digital service business. International talent are hard workers, and particularly Latin America on our same time zone. They're enthusiastic, they're dedicated. And if you're comfortable with kind of digital, resource management in terms of schedules and tasks, it's great. So we have been using a software developer out of South America. We've been using like lease abstracting, like we're buying this 200 unit light industrial space. So there's 200 leases, and they're like really old leases. And we've got a company down there for $10 an hour that's pulling out all the information on them. But we're going to be bringing on bookkeepers. We just switched our digital advertising to offshore, and we're going to be doing estimating and anything we can. We're looking down there. So I think it's a topic that people need to be aware of from a cost point of view, of resource availability point of view, and
great. That's really interesting.
Something to keep your ears open.
Keep your eye on. Yeah. That's super interesting. And then I guess one other question I'd ask before we wrap up is are you looking to continue building investor relationships? You kind of already have the investors that you work with and you're kind of happy with that, or what's your investor relations kind of plan? Are you looking to grow that base, or are you kind of happy where you are?
Very good. Now that, as far as my personal pursuits at the moment, I'm growing our investor base. So I have a few friends and family that I know and are from our area, but we're certainly looking to grow those relationships, expand them. And I think like I said, I think I have a service to particularly the smaller investors. I think we offer something unique, and I'm excited to just, get to know everyone who wants to be in Oregon in this market.
All right, fantastic. So how can the audience find you and connect with you offline or online?
Yeah. So my company is Signal Ventures, and I'm on LinkedIn. Our website is signalv.com. We do have Instagram, so find us somewhere, message me, and I'd be happy to talk any of these topics.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you,
Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
We want to hear your thoughts and feedback on today's episode and what topics you would like us to discuss in future episodes.
Follow us on Spotify to be notified when our next episode is live. To connect with John and I, follow us on LinkedIn.
Thanks for joining us today on Breaking New Ground.